I'd like to call the July 17th, 2024 Policy and Academics Committee meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Yeah, Ms. Katita?
Here.
Mr. Wright? Here.
We'll call him in the house. All right, item A, to consider revisions to policy EB, Building and Grounds Management. Mr. Lee.
Mr. Mayor, Superintendent Martin, Chairperson here. The Louisiana Legislature in their session had Act 352. In this act, it included a prohibition of the use of marijuana in any form, and that is going to be added to that policy. Page 2. So I'm asking for your
Now, motion, Mr. Wright, and I second it. Do we have any participation, any questions from the public or comments? Any board comments? If not, then please vote. Motion carries. Item B, to consider revisions to policy GAMA, employee smoking, tobacco, and marijuana use. Again, Mr. Lee.
Again, thank you. This is for the same Act 352, and in this portion of the policy, again, it adds and prohibits the use of marijuana in any form. This language is to be added to the policy, and our board attorney reviewed this and in the master.
Mr. Wright seconds. Have any public comment? Any board comment or question?
I got one question.
Yes, sir.
What is going to determine, like, if it's is a discipline action or the $200? It's going to determine, like,
Who decides?
Looking back at this policy.
The last line of
Yes, that would be, it falls on me to make that decision.
so, like, will we take it into consideration?
Well, I think a lot of things would be taken into consideration. So, a person who has a prescription, who inadvertently forgets it on their person, will probably be given the most latitude. A person who does not have a prescription, who is actively doing things with this product on campus that we wouldn't want, right, whether they're employee or not, would have a potentially different consequence. So while the law establishes that you can't have that product on or use that product on our campus, there will probably be some times, given the circumstances surrounding how this came to be, where you would have some left and right limit to this. Yeah, very good. Something we've never dealt with.
If there are no other questions or comments, vote. Motion carries. Item C, to consider revisions to policy IDCH, home study programs, and that would be Mr. Hills.
Yes. In the 2024 regular session, the legislature passed Act 715 that takes effect August 1st, requiring school boards to allow participation by home study students in extracurricular activities and interscholastic athletics, as long as they live in the attendance zone of the public school and meet and maintain all requirements for participation. Policy IDCH, the home study program, has been revised to include the provisions of the new statute, by Statute 17-176.2, created by Act 715 of 2024. The revisions by forethought have been reviewed by our attorney and CWA and are in order.
Motion, Mr. Wright, I second it. Do you have any public comment? Any board comment or questions? I do have a question. So after they apply, but they have to try out. It's not like you're going to automatically. So I need to know.
And they also have to prove that they're enrolled in that home study program, and verify that with us, and meet any criteria that we would have for any of our athletes or cheerleaders. What's this great?
Most important one, they would be the GPA. You got to put it in a fully vested home study program, and that you can illustrate the GPA greater than
Not any, or any questions, we can vote. Motion carried. Item D, to consider revisions to policy IDE, co-curricular activities and extracurricular activities. Mr. Delco.
And this is coming off of the same law Mr. Phillips just described, Act 715. The revision to this policy of co-curricular and extracurricular activities is simply adding a paragraph that describes exactly what Mr. Phillips just explained, making sure that we do have provisions for those students to be able to participate, as he described.
Motion, Mr. Wright, second. I second it. Any public comment? Any board comment? As a board member, though, I have to state my concerns is that the insurability of these students, and who is going to make that decision? Do they fall under the school boards?
That is an unknown. I'm going to say that we have to work with our business department, the insurance company, to see how these non-enrolled students get participating in our sports all covered under our insurance. We need a separate umbrella. We don't know.
That is definitely a liability that concerns board members.
Are you speaking to injuries or?
Yes, if a person is participating and they get hurt, where does the liability fall?
I know for coverage medically, when a student enrolled in one of our schools chooses to try out for a sport, we've got to sign as a parent, that we are waiving the school board coverage, because there's always the school board coverage offered. But then if you're talking about maybe other liability as far as potential lawsuits or
Just
something.
a question, and I know that's going to be addressed by the powers that be. All right, moving on to item E, to consider revisions to policy IDFA, interscholastic athletics, and that again is Mr. Delphin.
So the first policy spoke to COVID and extracurricular activities. This policy does the same thing, except it speaks to actual athletics. And this is also with Act 715. It adds the same paragraph as the previous policy, granting or allowing those students to try out and potentially be part of that team. And on the third page, there is a change that is simply there to align itself, our policy, with the requirements of the LHSAA. And this speaks to students who are seniors in high school competing in LHSAA sports that don't come to school for all 7 periods of the day. So there's some rules about what those students need to do to remain eligible. And this aligns our policy with LHSAA.
So moved, Mr. Wright seconded. Any public comment, any board comment or question? Not vote. Motion carries. Item F, to consider revisions to policy JBE, truancy. Mr. Fields.
386 of the 24 regular session, which becomes effective August 1st, expands the information in ORS 1733. Habitual unexcused absences and unexcused tardies. The Act requires parents of truant students to ensure that their children make up missed schoolwork. Schoolwork can be made up by attending after-school tutoring sessions, weekend makeup classes, or other remediation opportunities as determined by the school board. until the student has caught up with his or her schoolwork. Parents are also required to attend any assistance fair conducted by the school that provides information or supports available to families. Act 386 also allows for penalties as provided in RS 1492.2, such as monetary fines, imprisonment, or court-ordered counseling, and that the principal or designee note any concerns that school personnel have relative to a child's attendance on the back of any supplemental security income, SSI, form received by the school relative to that child. Policy JBE Fluency has been revised by Forethought Consulting to include the provisions of Act 386 of 2024. The revisions have been reviewed by our board attorney and child welfare and attendance and are in order.
So moved, Mr. Wright, second. Any more, comment, public comment, any board, questions? If not, let's vote. Motion carries. Item G, to consider revisions to policy JCDAA, student smoking, tobacco, and marijuana use. Yeah, Mr. Fields, you just don't stand up.
Act 352 of the regular session revised statute 17240, prohibition against use of tobacco in schools to include prohibition of use of marijuana in any form. This language has been added by Forethought Consulting to 3 policies. Policy JCDAA, student smoking, tobacco, and marijuana use; DAMA, employee smoking, tobacco, and marijuana use; and EB, buildings and ground management. These revisions by Forethought Consulting have been reviewed by our board attorney and reviewed by CWA and RNR.
The right moves, I second it. Any public comment? The board comment or questions? Not. Vote. Motion carried. Item H, to consider revisions to policy JCDAE, student computer and technology use. Mr. Fields.
Yeah, so this is a big one, so bear with me for a second. Act 313 of the regular session added language to 17239, prohibition against unauthorized use of electronic telecommunication devices. The language added forbids possessing an electronic telecommunication device on a student's person during the instructional day. The Act then goes on to provide that electronic telecommunication devices must be turned off or properly stowed away during the instructional day, or prohibited from being turned on and used during the instructional day. This act is effective with the start of the 24-25 school year. However, it gives no guidance as to how these provisions are to be enforced. The act does not replace the first section of 17239, which prohibits use and operation on school grounds and school buses unless authorized by the school principal or designee. Act 313 exempts the provisions for any student whose IEP, IAP, Section 504 plan, or individual health plan requires the student's use of electronic telecommunication devices. This policy does provide that students and parents be informed of this policy and related consequences for inappropriate ECD use annually. Board shall ensure that this notice goes out this school year and should specifically notify parents and students of the added electronic device provisions. Forethought Consulting has added this language to policy JCDAE, student computer and technology use. The revisions to policy JCDAE by Forethought Consulting have been reviewed by our board attorney, CWA, and RNR.
Mr. Wright motioned and I seconded. Oh, I'm sorry, I've got public comment. There was so many words in that. Okay, board comment or questions? How would that, you're gonna notify parents by?
Yeah, so I think it's the middle line.
Well, if the kid was using a laptop for his class,
You can't, right? So this is about cell phone, right? So this is the law that Louisiana passed to prohibit the use of cell phones in classrooms during the instructional day. Now, if you read it, it leaves a whole lot up to this board to determine how this is going to work. What will happen is we're going to create a video for our community to show what we're going, how this is going to impact us. But the truth is, this is not going to impact us greatly, right? Kindergarten through 5th grade, from the time the bell rings to begin school, to the time the bell rings to end school, we are not going to allow the children to have access to a phone that's on, right? It's got to be off. It's got to be in a book bag. Grades 6 through 12, we're interpreting the instructional day as the beginning of first period to the end of first period, the beginning of second period to the end of second period. And so when a student is on the Highs campus before school, they can call their mom, text their friend, and use their phone. At lunch, they can use their phone. But if they're in a 4th period classroom, access a phone just on in their hands, they're in violation of this policy, violation of state law. They're going to get a school consequence. Right now, the most often used school consequence for a cell phone is a day of in-school suspension. So that's what this law is addressing, is the use of cell phones by children during the instructional day.
I do know that sometimes teachers use the children's cell phone as part of the instruction. That's going to be prohibited.
That will be prohibited. We are not going to do that. The good news is that you are right, but the Chromebooks that we've given all of our students have made that no longer a requirement. And the Chromebooks actually have the Go Guardian app and features on it so that the teacher can better monitor what the kids are doing on those devices, which is why we're just going to end the practice of using cell phones as instructional tools.
Any other questions? Please vote. Item I, to consider revisions to policy JD discipline. Mr. Bills.
Yes, Act 400 of the regular session effective August 1st, 24, revised 17416 regarding student discipline. The Act prohibits a principal or administrator from prohibiting or discouraging a teacher from taking disciplinary action, recommending disciplinary action, or completing a form to initiate disciplinary action against a student who violates school policy or interferes with an orderly education. Disciplinary action must be in accordance with the school board policy. In addition, principals and administrators cannot retaliate or take any adverse employment action against a teacher who takes appropriate disciplinary action on a student. Act 400 also now states that a teacher shall remove a student from the classroom for disorderly conduct, replacing the permissive may remove. A similar policy change was made in reference to conferences with the parent or legal guardian after the third removal of a student from the classroom, replacing may be with required. This act is also revised 17416.18 to add similar language to the Teacher's Bill of Rights. If the Bill of Rights is in any administrative handbook, those should be adjusted to reflect the new law on discipline. These policy changes made by forethought have been reviewed by our board attorney or in order, and I ask for your approval.
Moved. Second by Mr. Wright. Any public comment? Any board comment? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Babbitt.
I do have a question about the teacher bill of rights. Is that published in our parish handbook for everyone?
Yeah, to student parent handbook.
I just wanted to make sure. Thank you very much.
No? If not, please vote. Motion carries. Item J, to consider revisions to policy JDD, suspension. Mr. Hills.
Act 337 of the regular session relative to mandatory expulsion amending revised statute 17416 relative to suspension and expulsion effective August 2024. The provisions now include that students in grades 6 through 12 who are suspended for the third time within the same school year for any offense, excluding dress code or tardies, shall be expelled until the beginning of the next school year, pursuant to a due process hearing. The language addressing mandatory expulsions for firearms, knives, and controlled substances has been consolidated to state that for students in grades 6 through 12, any student found guilty of being in possession of a firearm, a knife with a blade equal to or in excess of 2.5 inches, or any illegal narcotic, drug, or controlled substance on school property, on a school bus, or at a school-sponsored event, shall be expelled for a minimum period of 4 complete school semesters. Students in grades 6 through 12 may also be recommended for expulsion if found guilty of being in possession of tobacco, alcohol, or vaping products on school property, a school bus, or at a school-sponsored event. For consulting has adjusted the suspension and expulsion policies to reflect these changes. Policy JDD suspension is in order and has been reviewed by our board attorney, our child welfare and attendance office, and in
Mr. Wright moved, I second. Any public comment? Any board comment or questions? If not, let's vote. Oh, we have a question, I'm sorry, Ms. Russo.
This is only for grade 6 through 12. Just making sure.
What part, Mr. Brown?
After the third suspension, recommended expulsion.
Motion carried. Item K, to consider revisions to policy JDE, expulsion. Yes.
So the verbiage for policy JDE is the same as the verbiage for policy JDD. I can read it again if you would like, or if you willing to accept.
Does anybody want to hear it again? All right, so moved. Mr. Wright second. Any public comment? Any board comment or questions? Not, please vote. Motion carried. Item 11, to consider revisions to policy JGCE, child abuse, and that's Mr. Delphin. Miss Delphin, excuse me. Oh, I see, hey Delphin.
So in the session, we had Act 216, which revised the Children's Code Articles 603 and 610 that had to do with child abuse reporting procedures. So this is going to add in a school resource officer or SRO as a mandatory reporter. It's also going to address some of the policies that are required by law that says that you can't retaliate against someone that makes a policy if your policy states that they shouldn't be able to report. And then all languages have been removed to talk about you need to notify personnel, the superintendent, that you made the report because that might be interpreted breaking confidentiality. So what we're going to do is revise the policy JGCE to include those additions and to take out the pieces that talk about reporting to the superintendent.
All right, moved, I second. Any public comment? Any board comment or question? If not, please vote. Motion carries. And then, finally, M, to consider revisions to the teacher job description. Ms. Khalid.
So, as you know, the Louisiana has changed our evaluation system. We are going to now move from Compass to the LEADS system. So what we are doing here for our teachers is we are going to have our job description match what our observation system will be. So therefore, you will see some significant changes. All the old verbiage from the Compass rubric will now move to the LEADS information toward the end. You see that the new information is placed there for the 4 domains that teachers will be responsible for on their observations. So again, we wanted the job description to match what they're actually doing in the classroom. Also at the end, you'll see that we removed the area where they have to sign off. Because again, now we have everything electronic. So I ask for your approval to make this change.
Sir, Mr. Wright moves, I second. Any public comment? Any board comment or questions? Yes, ma'am, Ms.
I just
Bushra.
want to say that I think this is make this job description a whole lot better.
All right, we'll vote, please. Motion carries. There being no other, items on the agenda,